I'm a big fan. I'm a big fan of not going on roller coasters. Hey, all right. Welcome to the Big Story Podcast, your favorite comic book interview podcast. I'm Alex Morrissey.
I'm Gary Dufner.
Philip not here right now. Maybe later. And tonight we have a very special guest, Erica SCHULTZ. Erica, welcome.
Hi, thank you for having me.
I guess welcome back is a more appropriate thing since you've already been here.
Yes.
Back at the beginning of your Kickstarter, which is, it must seem like a million years ago already.
Well, you know how everybody was saying like 2020 time is just like a construct, you know, time does not exist. That's how I've been feeling throughout this whole Kickstarter. You know, time doesn't exist. It's just gently ticking away.
It's quite the thing. My direct connection with Kickstarters has been on a very different level. It's been with a gaming company. So I've done copywriting and sort of brand management for a gaming company. And like they're dealing in like, our target goals are like this year it's 2.6 million, next year it's 4 million. And like, so they're big numbers. And it's like, listen, my getting paid doesn't really like what happens on the day-to-days doesn't really matter. Like I did my job, but it's like, you're tied to the thing regardless, at whatever level you are. And it's just, and the people running it are like really close, people to me. And I'm bleeding for them the whole time, because it's like this huge rush out of the gate. It's like, boom, 1 million, 2 million. You're like, oh man, we're going to crush this. And then it's like,
then there's the plateau.
And you just sit there and you look and you're like, how is this, and it's just terrifying experience. And I don't think it's any different if you're trying to get $800 or if you're trying to get $8 million. I think it's just this line of panic and terror. So
it is because, well, I mean, like I used to be very, I've admitted to this. I've used to be very like, oh, I didn't want to do Kickstarter when, Kickstarter Indiegogo first started happening. I didn't want to do any of that because I was like, it's like digital panhandling.
That's what I used to call it. That's why they named it the wrong way.
And so I didn't want to do any of it. But a friend of mine had sort of sat me down and said, it's not really like that. It's, you're offering people the opportunity to become part of something and to sort of, for lack of a better term, like almost like pre-sales, you know what I mean? And so once I started sort of changing and reframing the way I thought about it, I thought, that's not a bad idea.
No, I think I'm completely in your lane with this because I think I really was in that same sort of mindset.
Yeah.
And working with that client has been really, sort of like enlightening to the whole process. And for them, it is since they're in manufacturing, they really need to know what their numbers are because forecasting is a voodoo. It's not science. It's voodoo. And I think for so many companies, and I think if you were saying listen, if you were saying, hey, I want to do this comic book, you would need, and let's just say you had the money and you're, sitting in a box and you're like, oh, I'm going to do it anyway. But if you're like, I don't know how many to make, like, because I don't know where it's going to go. I mean, how do I get it to all the comic book stores or how do I get to any comic book stores? So I'm like, what do I print? 2,000? Do I print 10,000? Do I print 20?
Well, that's what we went through with M3, the first book that I wrote. Vicente Alcazar and I went through that. We didn't go through Kickstarter. We did the book on our own.
Right.
And it was only after we were approached by Diamond to be put into their catalog did we really start thinking about, okay, we got to call the printer and tell them that we need a run of, 500 books or something like that. Because at the time we were doing, 50 here, 100 there kind of thing. Right. And that's what really, that's when I really started thinking about, in terms of like, Comicron numbers and things like that. And, this obviously, our print run is going to be, we have almost 700 backers. So, our print run's going to be 1,000 anyway.
Amazing.
Thank you. We're excited. I'm hoping to get to 700 before the end. I'm hoping like a nice, even 700 would be cool. But, we're thinking about this idea of like, okay, so how many do we get now? And obviously we're going to buy 1,000 because aside from that, aside from all the backers, we then have to turn around and talk to the Diamond rep again and see what, and I want to make sure that I don't have to do like a rush printing
Right.
for a bunch of books,
Fulfillment's an issue, like on a distribution end. So I mean, you don't want to be, hey, we need you to get another 250 copies for us. Yeah. And can you do it like, and the printers are like, yeah, of course we can do it, but
here's the rush fee, here's this fee.
Sure,
yeah.
Sure. Yeah. We have to give you another setup fee because, we already took the job off. So, I mean, it adds up. I mean, it's, so, I mean, I think it's a fantastic model. I mean, if you look at the publishing industry for books, I mean, you can see how heavily they have been pushing, I'd say like in the last 5 years, for trying to get pre-sales up. Like, hey, like since now authors are on social media and the world can kind of see what an author is doing, they're like, hey, get that pre-sale number up. Let's get this thing. Yeah. So then we can say, hey, Barnes and Noble, we already have 17,000 orders in the bank for you guys, up your number because that means more people are coming, that kind of.
And this author has, 200,000 followers on Twitter or, Instagram or whatever. And that's sort of used as a more determination of, what the numbers are going to kind of look like.
Yeah, absolutely. So for better or for worse, I guess, there are authors who have no interest in social media. So it's an interesting combination there. You go to their pages or their websites are run obviously by the publishing company and it has nothing to do with them. And you go, well, that's not really, I guess I'm just not going to.
Hey, look, if they have a manager that can do that or an agent, God bless them. Some of us are stuck doing it all on our own.
No,
I'm very lucky. I have James Emmett to help me out. So, he's been fantastic. So
why is he so angry?
What?
Why is James so angry?
What do you mean? Why is he so angry?
Isn't his handle as James is angry?
No, his handle is his Twitter is James Emmett or James Emmett Illustrates.
No, I think his handle is, but I think his little title name on.
His title. Oh,
yeah, like you can change that ad nauseum. So I think he's angry right now. So I don't.
Well, if he's angry, I hope he's not angry at me, but.
I don't think so. He seems to like you a lot.
We've been inseparable for the past 7 months straight. So I mean, yeah. I'd be sick of me too.
So you said that you're in New Jersey. Did you grow up in that area, or where did you?
I'm more in Central Jersey now. I grew up up in North Jersey. Spending weekends in the Bronx, and so between weekends and summers in the Bronx, and growing up in Bergen County, that's my area of expertise.
Wait, I mean,
wow.
Why the Bronx?
Oh, that's where my parents grew up.
Okay.
Yeah.
I just
grandparents.
I was like, maybe you're a big fan of the zoo or the botanical garden.
Well, the zoo, we were Yankee fans. We grew up as Yankee fans. Sure. We would go to the botanical gardens, Van Cortlandt Park.
Yeah. Go to was it come on, what's the really nice, beautiful grounds that's on Wave Hill? Have you ever gone to Wave Hill?
Probably.
Yeah, it's sort of right over the Spuyten Duyvil Bridge, and it's this beautiful estate up there. So definitely a great summer afternoon kind of thing. So you grew up there. Like only kid, or like what was the?
No, I'm one of three, like in the book.
Yeah. Okay. And all sisters.
Not a biography.
No. What? No, it's not an autobiography. No. I have an older. My brother's the oldest, and then my sister, and then me.
Oh, okay. Right on. Yeah. That's cool. So I did a little poking and correct me if I'm wrong. Did you get into this racket of comic book world, but previous to that you were in advertising?
Yeah, I worked as an art director at Gray in New York for about 8 years. Okay. And I was I was in the flagship building that was on 3rd Avenue. Yep. And then they had downsized a lot, and they were moving to another building. They moved to Madison Square Park area, And when they moved to that building, they basically laid off a bajillion people simply because they had like 15 floors in the 3rd Avenue building, and then they were going to have like 3 floors in this new building. So there was like no physical space for everybody. So I was I think I was like the 3rd or 4th round of layoffs.
Yeah.
You know, like every time a round of layoffs happened and you survived, you were like, whew. And then 3 months later, another round happened. So that was, so that's what happened. And I freelanced for a while, and then I started working at a studio in New York. And I started doing Photoshop. I was a Photoshop artist and animator, and they were working in, they were doing some comic stuff. And so I got more exposed to, I mean, I'd always read comics, but then I got more exposed to the sort of ins and outs of comic production from working at that studio. And I was there for, again, about 7-8 years. And while I was there, I was working, I started M3, and I started getting work from Marvel and DC and Dynamite while I was working at the studio. And then I want to say 2016 around, I got to the point where I was like, okay, I'm going to spread my wings and go full-time freelance now. And that's what I did.
And so when you said you were getting work with the other publishers, what was the work? Was it writing work, or was it coloring work, or what was
it was writing work mostly.
Okay.
It was writing and lettering work. Even though, you know, I've done background arts and I've been an inker and done colors and things like that.
Sweet.
I primarily wanted to be a writer. I'm a serviceable artist. I don't think I'm a good artist.
Right.
So I think I'm a good writer. I mean, I think I am.
Right.
So
You're a good writer.
Thank you.
I read the book, at least Bouquet.
Yeah.
It's really good writing.
Thank you.
It's pretty damn good.
So I wanted to focus more on writing, and I know that if I really, you know, stuck to it and drew every single day like you're supposed to, and all that other stuff, I would have gotten done. But it was just a matter of, you know what, the writing comes easier and more naturally to me, so let me just focus on that. So that's what I've been focusing on.
You know, it's really interesting you say that. I think it's one of these things where if you can be aware of where you cover more ground at a quicker pace, that's where you're going to be the most effective. So for some people, you know, putting words on paper, that isn't it. Some people, it's, you know, putting black over pencils, you know, whatever the thing is, if you can do that, that's where you're going to be most effective. And you're probably going to get the most sort of long-term growth out of it. The hard part is saying, but I really want to be, you know, and then fighting that little gremlin, because it's a tough.
Well, the grass is always greener. I mean, sure. You'll say, oh, I want to be this, and you'll get an opportunity to do that, and you'll find something about it that doesn't satisfy that itch.
Yeah.
And I think that there's a good bit to that, and there's a bad. The good bit is that, you know, sort of that I'm never satisfied keeps you hungry. It keeps you hustling. It keeps you looking for more work. The bad part about that is that you don't appreciate what you've already gotten. Yeah. Like, I remember when I first started out, the first real job that I had gotten was working for ABC Studios and Marvel, writing the original graphic novel for Revenge. It was a TV show that was on ABC. Mm-hmm. And so when I first started out, I had this idea. It's like, I want to work for Marvel and DC. So here, I got a job for Marvel. It's a Marvel book. I did it. But it's not a major Marvel superhero character. Okay, fine. Yeah. So then the next job that I got for Marvel, I got to write Daredevil. But Daredevil wasn't the character I really wanted to write. So, you know, so there's always going to be, you know, I will never be happy. And as good as that is for the drive of my career, that can drive my friends and my family up a wall, because they're like, you did the thing that you said you were going to do. And I'm like, yeah, but I didn't do it the way that I wanted to do it.
Yeah.
you know, that kind of thing. And I was exactly that way in advertising too. I remember the first time I had a spot on TV. I was living with my best friend and her sister, and we were renting a house together. And, you know, we were just watching TV, and I like went into the kitchen to get something, and she screams to me, oh my God, your spot's on, come on, run in. And we were all just watching, and they're like, oh my God, that was so cool. That was like the best 30 seconds kind of thing. And the only thing that I could think of was, yeah, but that's not the original spot that I storyboarded, or the actor was a real asshole that day on set, or my creative director was in a shitty mood. Like that's where my brain went to. Not,
oh my God.
Oh my God, you've got a 30-second spot on primetime television.
Totally.
Which is where my brain should have been. But it was, of course, you know, hyper analyzing all of the reasons why it wasn't a good thing. And then I got yelled at by my roommates being like, why aren't you going to just be happy about it? And it's like, you know, Dave was in a crappy mood, and I got yelled, you know, you know, my cab got stuck in traffic on the way to set, or, you know, I spilled coffee in the cab or something like that. You know, I'll always think of that kind of thing. So,
well, but I mean, listen, if there wasn't rain and and cold and all these sort of elements and wild animals out there, we wouldn't be living in these constructs that we call homes. You know, we wouldn't be wearing clothing. We would, like, all these things. It's that discomfort, you know, that's a sort of out there that drives us to do that thing, to strive to the next thing. How do we get there? So if you were just like, I'm really happy with how this all worked out, like, there's that sort of fear of like, would I push hard enough to get to that next level? So, yeah, I mean, I get it. I mean, it may not make you lay back in bed at night and go like, all right, well, that's a good day. You know, like, I mean,
no, it's more like, okay, what didn't I accomplish today? Sure. And I have to add that to the list of all the shit that I got to do tomorrow, and blah, 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 you know, and, you know, your mind racing. Yeah.
Totally. No, I totally get it. So how did, like, so you said that you did read comic books, like, so when did you sort of engage into comic books? How did that happen? And what were they like for you? Like, what was your,
my older brother, I mean, whatever he brought back from the spinner rack, I would just sort of look at. So it was like, you know, McFarlane Spidey, or, you know, Claremont and Byrne X-Men, or Claremont and Lee. I have a very distinct memory of reading Death in the Family, because the Batman's, you know, the Adam West Batman used to be on TV after school. So we would, you know, come home from school. We were latchkey kids. We'd come home from school, turn on the TV, you know, books across the living room floor kind of thing.
Get the channel, watching. You can see Batman.
Yeah, WPIX.
Yep.
And
Channel 11.
Yeah.
Yeah, WPIX.
Yeah.
Pix.
I lived in New York.
Pix. You remember Pix? Do you remember?
Yeah, Pix 11. And they used to play the Yankees games.
Do you remember the video game Pix?
I don't remember the video game Pix.
So this might be a few years before, but so this is the early 80s. I'm
from 77, so
yeah,
but we didn't have computer games.
You've been like 4 or 5. No. So you would call. So in the afternoon during the reruns on WPIX, they would take, like, during the commercial breaks, you could call in, and like if they got your number, I don't know, maybe you mailed your phone number, and they will call you, and then they had this video game, which is like a really rudimentary video game, sort of like a cross between like Pong and Space Invaders, and you would be on your phone, and you would say, when you said Pix, the thing would shoot the little thing out, and you had to blast up the gremlin. And if you won, they sent you a prize. Like, so you played a video game.
I don't remember that
over the phone. And
I don't remember that either.
Oh my gosh. It was like 1982, 83. Like, it was really early. It was hilarious. So, I mean, the delay was you watching it on TV, saying the word Pix, and then somebody pushing a button back, you know, in channel 11 to push the thing to make it shoot the little bullet. It was hilarious.
My God, you were really detailed in that, aren't you?
It's amazing.
I have no. You know what? I'll have to text my brother and find out if he remembers that.
You might, yeah, but definitely, if not, look it up. I'm sure it's on YouTube. So how much older is your brother?
5.5, 6 years.
Okay, so yeah, that's kind of perfect. Like he's like sort of half formed ahead of you, like one sort of half step ahead. So you're sort of like, when he's bringing in, it's like, he's cool. He's bigger. He knows what's cool.
He will always be bigger. My brother was that kid who was like 6'2" at 14.
Right. Okay.
He will always be bigger than me. So, he's like 6'8" now. So
well, I mean, if you were 6'2" or taller, then we'd get you on our volleyball team for sure.
Yeah.
No,
totally.
My sister, I am baby short. My sister's like 5'10", 5'11". My brother's like 6'7", 6'8". I'm like baby short at 5.5, maybe 5'6" on a good day.
On a good day, on a good morning when you're not.
On a good morning, exactly. And my husband's 6'2", so I'm the short one.
You come from a land of giants. I get it.
I do come from a land of giants.
So your brother's bringing back these stuff. Death in the Family was like, so that's the sort of the lightning bolt kind of memory event in the early.
Well, because I remember, I would watch Batman on, the Adam West Batman and Burt Ward. And I remember seeing the cover and being like, because in my mind, there was a connection between the comics and the TV show. For sure. So I saw Robin dead on the cover. Now, first of all, I hadn't, realized that it was a Jason Todd versus a Dick Grayson. But I remember like feeling really confused because being like, I just saw Robin on TV like 10 minutes ago. He can't be dead. Like they just got out of the Batcopter. Like it can't be, why did he die kind of thing. So
alternate realities, what's going on?
Exactly. I hadn't grasped the concept of the multiverse yet. So I remember being like, really, that was sort of when my brain said the comics are not the sort of are not lining up. They're not synchronous with the TV show. Right. Because I mean, I didn't realize that they were, that they had shot the TV show 20 years earlier.
Sure. Right.
It was on TV, that's contemporary for me, kind of thing. So. No, that's a good point. I mean, that's interesting. I wonder when the concept in your head kicks in. You're like, oh, these aren't brand new shows like on Saturday or on the weekday afternoons. Like, well, I mean, I knew the ones that were black and white, I knew weren't brand new. And we used to watch Doctor Who on PBS and all that other stuff. And and some of the John Pertwees were in black and white. And I want to say a couple of episodes of the Tom Baker were black and white, but then Tom Baker was pretty much all color. Same thing with Peter Davison, same thing with Colin Baker. And those were kind of contemporary because I remember watching like the new episode of Doctor Who. And I remember when John Pertwee went to Tom Baker went to Peter Davison. And I remember not liking Colin Baker because I had a huge crush on Peter Davison when I was a kid. And I remember when Peter Davison went to Colin Baker and Colin Baker was wearing that hideously ugly orange and yellow and brown jacket that was awful, awful. And it had like patches of this, really ugly, no offense, Colin Baker, but these patches of this really, ugly plaid that I really just disliked. And I didn't like him because he wasn't Peter Davison or Tom Baker. Right. Pretty much. So, yeah, I mean, we all get that. I mean, I think we live that with James Bonds or any other sort of character that inherits another role. So that's cool. So you were right there, I guess, kind of that late 80s kind of realm of comics, which was actually really rich territory of some pretty cool comics being put out. So that's pretty. Well, yeah, I mean, I would read, when it was Claremont and Byrne. Claremont, did some work with Terry Austin, Jim Lee, definitely. Mutant Genesis arc I was reading as they were coming out. My brother was picking them up and I was reading them as they were coming out. McFarlane Spider-Man, the original Venom run, I was reading that when it was coming out. Because that was, I want to say 89,
Yeah,
90 around.
That's around 89. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and I was reading those when they were coming out. And Jim Lee, I think, started in 88 on X-Men. It was like 88, 89.
I think it was a little later than that because I think he was doing Alpha Flight around that time, and then he did Alpha Flight and Punisher before he hopped over to.
Because Mutant Genesis, I think, was 90.
Okay.
I'm not entirely sure. I have the trade on my thing, but I think, but I mean that around in that like 3 to 4 year period kind of thing, like 88 to 92 kind of thing. I was getting, I was reading the monthlies as they were coming out, simply because, that was what was there at the time. And I enjoyed visual storytelling. I really did. It was more exciting to me than just novels. It was, to me, it was, whereas a lot of people will read novels and really, and use their own imagination. For me, I liked the sort of springboard that the comics gave, as, the actions between the panels kind of thing.
Yeah.
And I really liked that. And yeah, I mean, it was a medium that I thought was really cool and a lot of fun, and it was a very interesting way to tell stories.
So you mentioned storyboarding when you were doing advertising. Were you like, drawing as a kid?
I mean, I would do what I would usually do is I would do sketches, for the storyboards, and then I would.
I said say like in high school. I mean, like in school growing up, were you?
Oh yeah, I mean, I would draw and write all the time when I was a kid. I mean, my mom had been had worked as a freelance illustrator.
Oh wow.
And I had and I would always like draw. And I took art in high school and things like that. But I didn't go to art school. I mean, I have a bachelor's of arts, but I don't have a bachelor's of fine arts. I didn't go to art school because, I always thought like I'm an okay artist. I'm a serviceable artist. I can communicate visually what it is what the information I'm trying to communicate, but it's nothing flashy. It's nothing spectacular to look at. And like we said before, I wanted to focus more on something that I knew that I could do and make more of an impact at. And for me, I felt that was writing. I mean, I still did, graphic design. And when I ended up working as an art director, I was doing graphic design work. I was doing, sketching storyboards. And then I would use, I would basically do like mixed media in order to like really communicate what was going on kind of things. But it basically came down to, it's like, where does my effort get the most mileage?
Yeah.
And it was in, creating stories and writing them. I mean, unless something is crazy in terms of when I script, unless something is, really sort of complex, I try not to thumb it out because I don't want to, I want the artist to be able to express themselves. But if they have an issue, then yeah, I'll sketch a layout for them and everything.
That's awesome.
But I usually allow them to take a first crack because I want to see where their mind's at, because they might have a much better idea than what I had in my own head.
Yeah, I think that's totally legit. I think that's I've worked with I worked when I was penciling. I worked with all types of writers, and but I mean, I worked with Keith Giffen, who draws everything out. So you get a piece of copy paper with 6 panels, and drawn in Sharpie are all the panels. And you're like,
your layouts, yeah.
But you're not beholden to those layouts. That's the beautiful thing about Keith. He's just telling the story the way that he finds it the most effective. So you're able to kind of like, if you want to rejigger it or turn it into 2 panels or 20 panels. If it works better for the storytelling, he's fine. So
that's what I usually say is, unless I'm working on a work for hire project where they have like very specific kind of, the licensor really has sort of like a firm grasp of the script and, says, no, we need this amount of panels per page, blah, blah, blah. What I usually tell artists is, whatever however many panels, if I say here's 5 panels on a page and you can communicate the same information in fewer, do it. If you feel that you need an extra panel, do it. Yeah. Because I'm going to do a lettering pass anyway. If I'm not lettering the book myself, which I do letter some of my own stuff. So if I'm not lettering the book myself, I'm going to do a lettering pass, and, you know, then whatever, you know, dialogue was wherever, I'll just shift it around.
Totally.
When I get the pages, you know, as they are. But I try and give the artist a lot of freedom to do what it is, to take the information and communicate it their own way. Sometimes, you know, people kind of get off, you know, they'll sort of like get off track, and I'll say, okay, you know, I see what you're trying to do here, and I think it's really cool, but I think that we're losing some of the information. I think we're losing the what we're supposed to be communicating to, and you know, and depending on the time crunch, if it's a huge time crunch, then I'll say, okay, fine, you know, I'll just write another dialogue line to sort of connect some of the dots. But I want the artists to feel comfortable. I mean, I've worked as a background artist. I've worked in a studio. I know the grind, so I want them to feel comfortable, and I never want to feel as if I'm a boss or anything like that, because comics are collaborative, and you really shouldn't, you know, treat your collaborators that way, because you're bringing them in because they have a skill that you don't have. Yeah. So respect that and appreciate that, and also allow them to express themselves.
No, I think that's a great approach to it. So you, going back to your going, you know, off to school to study, and then getting into advertising. I mean, you're talking heavily about, like, you know, story writing, you know, in a written sense. But when you went off to school and then you get a job in advertising as an art director, I mean, traditionally advertising is, you know, a teams-based kind of thing where you have the writer and the copy, you know, and the art director, you know, teaming up to do, you know, campaigns. Was that how it was with you at Gray, or was it sort of you were given clients and you kind of did double duty, or how did that work?
Well, when I started as an assistant. So I was the administrative assistant. I was the creative assistant for 12 executives.
Right.
And they were all some form of VP. You know, we used to joke you could walk across the East River on the backs of the VPs. Yeah. And
love it.
What would happen is I basically, you know, kept their calendars, did their timesheets, you know, the whole thing as an assistant. But I would get, you know, in my interview, my creative director said to me, like, what is it that you want out of this job? And I said, well, I want to be a creative. Yeah. So he said, all right, well, you know the Photoshop, you know, Quark, you know, Quark. Yeah, well, this is 1999 was so when funny. I was hired.
Yeah.
You know the programs. You have a degree in English, but you know the programs. So we're going to have you working double duty as an assistant. So you're not just going to be the secretary. You're also going to be a junior art director and a junior copywriter. And that was made clear from day one.
Cool.
And so, you know, I wrote radio copy, and then I worked on storyboards, and a lot of times it was, you know, modifying storyboards from the senior art directors. But other times it was, okay, so we've got an in-house B2B kind of thing that we need, you know, a 10-second spot done. Let's throw it to Erica.
Yeah, sure.
Because nobody really wants to do it anyway.
Yeah.
And so little by little, I was sort of building up a portfolio after about 2 years. I was the assistant for about 2 years. And I was sort of building up a portfolio. And there was this idea of, okay, well, when we promote her, are we going to promote her as a writer or an art director? Right. And originally they promoted me as a writer because the first thing that they said was, oh, well, you know, she doesn't have a BFA and she has done the writing, so let's promote her as a writer. And I remember so vividly my creative director sitting me down and saying, now that you're the writer, you're not going to be doing art direction. And I said, okay, I'm just going to focus on writing. And I'm not even kidding you. Like 6 months later, I'm sitting in my former broom closet office.
Right.
And there's a knock at my door, and it's my creative director, and he's frantic. So-and-so is out sick, and the client needs the storyboards, and we need to make these changes, and nobody's around. This is the last time I will ask you to do something as an art director.
Yeah.
I'm sick. I got to go home.
Yeah. Lo and behold, it was not the last time. And then about a year later, my creative director, my executive creative director, pull me into their office and say, all right, so we'll be honest with you. You're a good writer, but you're more valuable to us and the team as an art director.
Sure. Because
you're fast and you get everything done.
And
so we're going to say again.
And you're here.
And you're here. And so we're going to laterally move you as an art director. And I said, does it come with a raise?
Right.
And they said no.
Yep.
So they moved me to art director. And then I was the art director for the vast majority of that. And then when I got passed over for a promotion and I went to my creative director and said, why? They said, well, because you don't have a BFA.
Jeez. It's like you were set up for success there.
No degree.
And then I said, but you knew this when you hired me literally 2 months after I graduated college.
Yeah.
You hired me, saw my transcript, knew exactly what it was. And then you guys were the ones who decided to change me to an art director. And you guys were the one who decided that this is what I was going to do.
Yeah.
Good.
And then I was laid off like 3 months later. I don't know if those two situations had anything to do with each other being laid off a few months later after having, an argument with my boss. So I don't know if they correlate, maybe not.
Well,
so, this was also this is 15 years ago.
Sure.
This is like 2007.
This is also the sort of the it's so funny that, they're like, well, as we all know, our degrees don't mean anything once you kind of get out into business. But what a lame excuse for it. Because listen, I taught advertising, in design for 3 years at the Creative Circus in Atlanta. And so I had your story of, I was the assistant at agency X. I wanted to be a copywriter or an art director, whatever. But they said, I didn't have, go get some, a degree or just get a portfolio. So they would come to these schools like the Portfolio Center or VCA or the Creative Circus. And they would all come here just so they could get this book of, 12 to 20, pieces to go back and go get an intro job, at the same agency for the, for the most part. So it's ridiculous that they would use that sort of to me, it sounds like an excuse. But I guess whatever.
Let's call him right now. Let's find out.
Yeah.
Gray advertising. Yeah. No.
No. Well, I honestly Gray was bought and then sold and then bought and sold.
Oh,
it was Gray advertising for the longest time, and then it was Gray Worldwide, and then it was Gray, and then I was let go, and then I didn't give a shit anymore.
They're so far from the company that they used to be. They used to. Yeah. We all went to school of visual arts, and so many people that I went to school with worked at Gray, because Gray would just pull all the art directors out from SVA. Be like, okay, come on aboard. So cool. So you worked at this. You said you worked at the studio. How did you transition from, working at the studio to getting writing work? How was your approach? Because scripts. So how was how did you get sort of eyes on what you needed to put together?
So and this is something that a lot of people don't want to hear, but it's the truth. Getting work as a writer in comics is harder than getting work as an artist. Work as an artist, an editor can look at your portfolio and within 3 page turns, they'll know whether or not they want to hire you. As a writer, you can't go to an editor with a script. You have to hire an artist and you have to create a book.
Wow.
And And the onus is on you. And I remember the first San Diego I went to was 2012. And the first panel that I went to was Breaking Into Comics, the Marvel Way, or whatever it was called.
Yeah.
And Axel Alonso was on the panel. Mark Brooks was on the panel. Sam Humphries was on the panel. And CB Cebulski was moderating.
Okay.
And I remember when Axel literally said, no one will read your script. And I wrote it down. And it's funny because Sam Humphries and I have talked about this on Twitter before. And I said, I remember Sam saying, put your money where your mouth is, hire an artist and get a book. And that's what Sam did with Our Love Is Real. And so at the time, I had already done a 6-issue story arc with Vicente Alcazar. We had already published M3. The trade paperback was out, and it was already going to into Diamond.
Yeah.
So I had copies of the trade paperback with me, but I had shown up to San Diego Comic-Con with a sample Batman script, a sample Captain America script, and a sample Transformer script, because I thought I could give a script as a portfolio piece.
Right.
I was lucky that I also had in my bag copies of the trade paperback for M3 issues 1 through 6.
Nice.
So, so I was handing those out to editors, and you know, you hand it to one editor, and then they pass it on to somebody else, and you know, and it just sort of snowballs from there. And I had gotten not an interview really, but an editor said that they wanted to sit down and chat with me, and I gave them a copy, and they passed it on to somebody else, who passed it on to somebody else. And then I got a phone call from a woman named Emily Shaw, who at the time was an editor at Marvel in their third-party books. So Castle, Once Upon a Time, Revenge, all the ABC shows that then had tie-in graphic novels or tie-in series. She was working on that. And I got, you know, she said, I got your M3 trade paperback from so-and-so, who got it from so-and-so, who got it from so-and-so. It was sort of making the rounds in the office.
Yeah.
And we'd really like you to write this prequel to the first season of the show Revenge. So, I mean, that's basically what it was. But, you know, Vicente and I put in, I mean, I started writing M3 in the end of 2008. And it wasn't until 2012 that I really had enough to go around and show people. And then it wasn't until 2014 until I had actually gotten my first paid job.
Yeah. That's, you know, it's so interesting. I mean, and, you know, that's a great, I mean, it's a great testament to the hard work and effort it takes to do that, because I think, you know, I mean, for someone like me, that was a very different time when it broke in. So I like it was a matter of, you know, you needed to sort of somehow ingratiate yourself with an editor to get your artwork in front of them. But even with writers, it was the same thing. You would have to send in writing packets, just keep sending in writing packets. And I mean, like, you know, listen, Dan Slott, you know, super successful writer, but Dan like worked in the office. He was the art returns editor. I mean, he was in there and he was doing his job, returning artwork and pitching all day. Like that was Dan's job, and he just kept going. You know, and he's, you know, but it's a testament. I mean, you have to kind of like grind it out to get there. And I think it's a very different, you know, sort of field now, where like you can't be tossing in, hey, here's my idea for this, here's my idea for that, from the outside, because if they publish anything that's remotely close to it, well, then now they're in a questionable, you know, situation of like, did we take this idea from somebody who sent something in, which happens. I mean, it happened to me. It happens to everybody. So I think that's when they say, like, you do your comic book, you show us your comic book, and then they go, okay, well, this is a good comic book. You know, we want to talk with you, versus, you know, just send us a bunch of scripts. And
it's interesting because, you know, they also want to see that you can follow through.
Yes, for sure.
And that's important, because how many people have half-written scripts everywhere?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I mean,
or half-drawn scripts, you know?
Oh, yeah. I mean, Erica, I mean, and I'm sure you've seen it. I mean, you sit at your table at a convention. I mean, I was handed, hundreds and hundreds of portfolios. And I remember sitting, this poor kid came up to me with this portfolio, slams it down, like, hey, take a look. I'm like, sure, no problem. First page is all penciled out. I'm like, cool. Second page is kind of penciled out. Third page is just kind of roughed in. And then there were blank pages, and he's telling me what's going to happen. And I was like, okay, cool. And it was just one of these, like, we'll have to have a teaching moment here. But yeah, no, I mean, it is the grinding it out thing. I mean, it took, it was a year and a half of my weekly to bi-weekly going into Marvel and DC with new work while I was still in art school to get work. Like, that's, I was able to, do work, for school, but it was just doing comic book pages and just keep going in. But you have to, I mean, that grinding it out thing is huge. That's huge.
That's why, I mean, and I say this a lot, and a lot of times I say things and people just don't want to listen to it. But, then, 6 years later, I get an email, you were right. And I'm like, haha, it always feels good when you hear you're right. It's being a full-time freelancer and doing this as a career and for a living is not for everybody.
No.
It absolutely is not. And there are people that want to write a comic because, it's my dream to write a comic. Okay, write a comic, but don't quit your job and, put all your hope and effort into this. I'm a dream killer for saying this, but if you're writing a comic because you think it's going to be the next big thing, then you're not writing a good comic.
Yeah.
You need to write a comic to write a good comic. Focus on that story, on telling a good story, not focusing on, oh, this is going to be the next Prime series, this is going to be next Hulu, Netflix, whatever. I mean, recently we got Sweet Tooth that just came out.
Sure.
When Jeff Lemire was doing Sweet Tooth, I'm pretty sure the idea in his head wasn't, oh, I'm going to do this and it's going to be a Netflix series.
Sure.
No, he was telling a compelling story in a comic.
Yeah.
I'd
like to anticipate what's going to be in the market 4 years from now. Like, this whole comic book thing could disappear.
It could, but it's already in people's heads now, though.
Yeah. Oh,
and everybody now thinks that a comic is a proof of concept.
Sure.
Like next month, I'm going to be teaching a summer intensive writing course, summer session. And the first class, I have to say to everybody, writing a comic script is not writing a screenplay. It is not writing a teleplay. It is not writing a play. You are not writing a comic for this class to turn it into a movie. Yeah. And if you are, then I'm going to pick it apart. Because would it be great if any of the comics, the original comics that I've written, became films or TV shows or whatever? Absolutely.
Yeah.
Do I feel better knowing that they are solid in the media that they were created in and created for? Yes.
Yeah, totally.
And I think that's what needs to really be drilled in. And a lot of times people don't want to hear that.
No, I mean, nobody wants to hear something that runs contrary to their, their story. I mean, like, listen, you wrote down the information, the most salient piece of information at your first, San Diego Comic-Con, board. You're sitting there, someone says something to you and you're like, okay, so like, I'm not going to be sending these scripts that I have sitting in my bag in. I need to, I need to show them a comic book that I've done. Thankfully you had one and you're able to move on. But I mean, you see, I mean, the look is you see the look is like, wait a minute. You don't understand my plan here. My plan is, it's foolproof. I'm writing this comic book and it's going to work.
Yeah. And I say, and it's, then I'm not the person to have a conversation with.
Right. Yeah. I mean, listen, and I hope that the comic book changes the world. Let's all hope it changes the world, but let's get the comic book done and make it the best comic book that you can possibly make, and then go for the next step, And
I also tell people to start small.
Yeah.
When people say that they want to start, that they have a 40 issue epic. No.
Yeah.
No, write a 5-page story, a 5-page story.
It's a challenge. It's a real challenge to keep something compelling in a very small point, in a small chunk of space. And it's also that 40-page epic, like, you hear it, and then the inevitable, like, well, no, it's like I've got the slow burn. I'm like, you don't got a slow burn. You got no comic book if you have a slow burn. You need to get the story going for the reader, because if they don't know.
You know who can get away with a slow burn?
Famous people.
Yes. So Jonathan Hickman can get away with 600 issues.
Sure.
Of a slow burn, because he's Jonathan Hickman.
Right.
And one of the biggest things that I hate is when somebody says, when I give some advice, they say, but so-and-so does this.
Right. Yeah.
And if it's Alan Moore, Kelly Sue DeConnick, Gail Simone, Matt Fraction, Scott Snyder, Tom King, whatever. Yeah, they do all of that stuff because they've earned the right to break the rules.
Go read their first comics.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And, and I teach writing at the Kubert School during the school year. And I run up against this constantly. And I tell the students, look, you think that you're going to step out the door and be Jim Lee. You're going to be Jim Lee in 1979, 1980, when he's getting rejection letters from Jim Shooter.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. Totally.
You're not going to be a superstar immediately. And even if you are so freaking talented, it doesn't matter, because you're not tested.
Nope.
You haven't been tested on a monthly schedule.
Nope.
Can you do, and this is I know a lot of people who want to be writers and want to be artists scoff at anthologies. Anthologies are the best in the world to get your feet wet. Absolutely. 5 to 8 page stories. Can you write it? Can you draw it? Can you hit your deadlines? This is good practice. Oh, but it's just a stupid anthology. Yeah, but guess what? That means that the next time you go to a convention and you see all those people that all have nothing but print walls, you're going to have a book at your table.
Yep. Yeah.
You're not just going to have the Deadpool prints and the Spider-Man prints and the Batman and the Superman prints. No, you're going to have a book at your table.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that says more than everybody who's got all the fan art prints.
No, for sure. It's a huge distinction to be made for people. And listen, there was a fortunate, once again, back in the early 90s, man, there were a lot of anthology books from Marvel and DC. They were sticking those short stories into their larger books or into the monthly anthologies. And it was great for people who were just breaking in, like, okay, cool. We'll give you this crack at this 8-pager or a 12-pager or a 5, whatever the number was. And it was huge, and it was, it was exciting. So yeah, no, you're totally right. Quick observation. Not so sure. Do you feel that you were pigeonholed right off early in your business with your work at Marvel as a legal artist? Just saying.
What do you mean a legal artist?
I believe the television show that you did the adaptation for this, the prequel.
Revenge.
Yes, Revenge, and Daredevil. Matt Murdock's a lawyer. So is this some sort of like editorial?
Oh, Revenge, but Revenge wasn't had nothing to do with lawyers.
Oh no, I guess I didn't watch the show.
No. Revenge was kind of the way it was explained to me. It was like Gossip Girl meets Count of Monte Cristo.
Okay.
Yeah. No. That if anything, I was kind of pigeonholed in sort of real world crime.
Yeah.
Because the first series that I did was M3 with Vicente Alcazar, and we did 12 issues, 2 story arcs, and it was a real world crime series. And I remember saying in an interview years ago that the reason why I like working on real world stories was because I was too lazy to do world building. And then, I end up world building on Forgotten Home, which was an 8-issue series that I did last year with Marie Cresta and Matt Emmons. And then it got nominated for 5 Ringo Awards. So I guess I wasn't that lazy.
No.
but yeah, I mean, I did get a lot of people saying, oh, well, you know, oh, you write crime fiction and that's your thing. So I figured, you know, I kind of wanted to sort of break out from that. And I got to write Xena for Dynamite and Charmed. So I got to sort of, you know, wade my toe into the, you know, sword and sorcery kind of stuff. And then with Deadliest Bouquet, we, you know, yes, it is still considered crime fiction, but there is that really family drama element to it that, you know, talks about, you know, these three sisters and, you know, their own personal resentments and issues with each other, but also, you know, their issues with their mom and how they were raised, and they had a very dysfunctional upbringing. So yeah, I mean, it's a bit of a story. It's a bit of a story.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm really looking forward to this. And I want to talk about the Kickstarter specifically, and then how you approach the stories after we do a little shameless plugging.
You know, I had to, you know, I had to find a segue. I had to find a segue.
It's a perfect segue.
She's good.
Let's first off, let's plug Fabian's upcoming novel. We are now, what? Let's see, what are we? 14 days out.
Suburban Dicks.
Oh yeah, okay.
Fabian is a suburban dick.
Yeah. So, yeah, but I mean, man, like he's getting on summer reading lists already with this thing. This is getting some great feedback. I'm super excited, and I can't wait to get my copy because I'm just pumped. Yeah, he's the jam, and I big fingers crossed for this. And then hold on a second, someone just send them. Okay, we'll ask that question, Sean, when we get back to that. Hold on, buddy. Questions are coming in, and then let's
I'm afraid
questions are coming in.
No, it's okay. And then we're gonna talk about Sean's his Kickstarter up for Divided District Studios. Shall we play the video? Should we play the video? Let's play the video.
Play the video.
Can we play the video?
So there's 4 stories in it?
Yeah, I think there's 4. Yeah, there's 4 different ones.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Super excited about this. They're doing great also on Kickstarter at the moment, so I'm really excited that they're crushing it.
Yeah, he's kicking butt.
I know he's kicking butt.
He's doing it.
and he's on Staten Island, which is the more amazing thing, that they're actually doing this on Staten Island. And then so like I'll pretend to be Phil right now.
All right.
This is the cover for issue 2.
Dude.
Yeah, of issue 2 of Leaf, available on Monarch Comics right now. If you buy any issue, or you buy this issue, you can get the first issue of any comic you want digitally sent to you, right? Is that the deal, Gary?
Yeah.
All right. I did my Phil bit, so that was pretty sweet, huh?
At first I thought you were asking me. I'm like, I
don't know.
Just say yes to anything we say.
Yes, or make it up. Make up an answer.
Sure.
That's the first rule of comedy.
Yeah. Right.
Yes, and yes.
And then, what's this?
Ooh. That looks like United Forces, my comic book.
Yes.
Yeah.
Also on monarchcomics.com.
Yes, thank you. You're good.
Gary, you're just crushing it, buddy. Yeah, so this is these two guys started these stories initially, like 1990-ish.
Yeah.
and they are
Yeah.
taking up the storyline, and they are wrapping up a long overdue arc. Pretty
And
exciting.
we're doing it kind of like an anthology book in the book that we're doing now, the Crashover.
Yeah, well, thanks for setting that up perfectly. So we're also we are big fans of the anthology as well, Erica, and we have an anthology that we're going to be putting on a Kickstarter later this summer called Crashover, and it stars these the main characters from Gary's comic. Oh, that's page 1 right there.
These guys right here.
Of it.
Well, I know you've been working this whole time, so
he's always working. So page 1 of the Crashover, and this tale featuring these two knuckleheads traveling through the issue. They will go through four other comic book creators' worlds. So they will go into
Nick Cagnetti's Pink Lemonade.
Yep,
okay.
they're going to Bradley Littlejohn's Goldbug.
Right.
We'll be going into Amanda Semler's Yeti or Not,
And
going into Blake Seal's Evil Monkey Man, but not in that order.
No.
And so so it's going to be an interesting continuous adventure going through, and
Alex is the main writer on that, and it's funny. It's funny stuff.
So yeah, it's a hoot. They're fun characters.
It's a hoot. I would say
it's a hoot. Oh, I haven't heard that one in a long time.
But just like you said, that splash page, Phil had a couple cracks at it, and then he emailed me and said, "Hey, could you give me a layout for this?" So I was like, "Okay." So I just sat down. I penciled out a layout for him, and then sent it to him. And then he did finish pencils. Now Gary's going hog wild with inks and color.
Very cool.
Yeah. So it's I totally get it. And then also coming up in 2 weeks, crossover number 7, issue 7. We did the
variant.
Yeah, we did store variant. So that's available if you go to Betas_comics, and you can pre-order your copy of number 7, which we've gotten the preview layout from Image, and it looks great with all the trade dressing on top of it. So go get some. It's the only one that features Madman. Nobody else has been allowed, apparently.
Is that Madman in that? Oh, look at that.
Yeah.
Mike let you.
Yeah.
He did.
Well, so and nobody's watching. So
nobody's watching.
I did the initial layout, and I got this. I'm like, you know what? It needed a little more jeopardy and peril, so I put Madman in there, in trouble, and and I penciled the whole thing out, and then I'm like, for something in my head said, maybe I should just edit, contact Image and just let them know, maybe, and I got a quick, absolutely can't use that character. I was like, okay. So
that will not do. Not
happy, sitting in my house. My wife happened to be away for the weekend, and I was just stewing. And so I didn't have a good, good level-headed individual at home. So I emailed Mike and I said, hey,
why not?
Here's what's going down, and his manager emailed me back like within a half hour and said, "Well, I'm actually on my way over to Mike's, and we're going to talk." So, and I forwarded him your email. So, and then that next morning I woke up and Mike's like, "Can you send me what your pencil or whatever you drew?" And I was like, "Yeah, sure." So I sent it to him. He's like, "Yeah, fine. I think it's great. Like I don't need I don't need a wheelbarrow of cash. Just send me a copy." I'm like,
awesome.
Okay. So I finished it up over the weekend, and then sat there the whole time thinking, like, there's no guarantee that Image is going to even say that's okay. They could have just been like, well, no, we told you no. So, but they were very cool. So,
well, I mean, to be honest, if Mike being the copyright holder, he more or less has more say over it than they do. So
yeah. And he's happened to be like the coolest dude in comics.
Yeah.
So, I mean, how good would that be for his reputation if he turned down, some sad story, Oh, by the way, Mike, I've made a speedy recovery, and it was a negative. I'm fine. I won't be dying of some sort of horrible illness that So yeah, so lay it out. Tell everybody about the deadliest bouquet.
Ooh.
The Deadliest Bouquet is in 1998, three estranged sisters reunite to solve their mother's murder and try not to kill each other in the process.
Nice.
So you have Rose, Poppy, and Violet.
Yes.
Their mom, Jasmine, owns a flower shop, and Jasmine is found murdered by Rose in the morning. Rose works the shop with Jasmine, and she's found murdered in the morning. And we slowly start to learn that these ladies had a very unusual upbringing. Jasmine was trained by French resistance Nazi hunters, and trained her daughters in the art of assassination and espionage. So all three of these women are trained assassins. One works at a flower shop. One is a mom and, part-time bookkeeper, and the other works as a model and, part-time assassin for hire. But they all sort of have their own lives, and once mom passes away, they're sort of all snapped back into each other's lives, and there's a lot of unresolved frustration and anger and resentment, and sibling rivalry never goes away. So it's there's a lot, there's a lot of family drama, but it's in the background throughout everything. It's who killed Jasmine, why, and who's going to solve the mystery. So we have the cops doing their job to try and solve the mystery, and then you have the girls doing their job trying to solve it. And they have a lot of angry fights too.
Yeah, well, I think inter-character conflict is some of the best writing. Like, it really, like when you have character, like, sort of protagonist, antagonist, cop, content, when you're just right, that's fun. And that, because it's usually sort of bigger and external, sort of action. But when you get characters who are not, they're all protagonists and they're all on the same side. So it's the team, but it's that interplay, which is so fun to really juice up.
And also, when you're one of three, there's always a 2 against 1 gang.
Yeah, right.
That always happens. And those alliances switch. So, in one scene, you see Rose and Poppy ganging up on the youngest Violet. And in another, it's Violet and Poppy, questioning Rose, like, well, you were supposed to take care of mom. Like, you were here. Well, how could you let this happen?
Right.
Kind of thing. When 5 minutes earlier, it was Poppy and Rose being like, you're so irresponsible, Violet. And, Violet then turns that on its head, and then Poppy's jumping sides. It's this constant sort of back and forth that happens. And I really, we really explore that. And, Carola Borelli and Gab Contreras, who are on art duties, Carola's doing the line work and Gab's doing the colors. They really have a great sense of the 90s aesthetic, but also Carola does very good acting, facial acting and stuff. So you can really see what, even without dialogue, you can really see what these characters are thinking. And it helps a lot to have that, because, there is a lot of dialogue in this, because, these sisters are constantly sniping at each other. And if anybody's ever had a sibling or been in an argument with anybody, everybody always tries to get the last word.
Yes.
That's like the thing. So, there is a lot of dialogue and back and forth between them, but just having that extra layer of body language and attitude and spunk to it, I think really, really helps. And Carola's got such clean line work, and Gab's colors really just enhance everything. And that's really what you want, excuse me, when you're making a comic, is you want to start out with like a good script and have an artist who's going to take that script and elevate it, and then have a colorist that's just going to make the line work look even better, and go up from there.
Upward and onward. So I'm so curious about this, because I write prose, so I write novels. So I have that sort of the somewhat luxury of getting to be indulgent when it comes to, dialogue and, back and forths. But how was it tailoring it for you? Because I mean, I would see this as just, ripe, field to be planting, so many seeds to grow all these great, conflicts and back and exchanges. So did you go down that road? Like were you finding you have to really do a lot of sort of self-editing to kind of keep things on track for the 20 pages or the 22 pages?
I had worked on the story for a while before, for a couple of years on and off before I actually decided to sort of go forward with it. And I had a lot of false starts. So I brought James Emmett in to work on to sort of go through these false starts and really find where the true through line was. And he helped immensely in that. But I am going to be lettering this as well. So I self-edit a lot when I'm lettering. But also, I mean, we really want to focus on the sisters, and that's like the main story. There's a whole backstory about the grandparents in World War II and Jasmine, sort of living this sort of like international life, traveling all over the place, trying to, with her family, trying to find Nazis who escaped before the end of the war. And that's always touched on. And that's, we develop that a little bit. But the real core story is who killed Jasmine and, who these sisters really are to each other, to their mom, where they fit in that world.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny because just the other day I was talking with my wife, wanting to watch, rewatch the Darjeeling Express. It's one of my favorite Wes Anderson movies, and I'm just thinking like, it's sort of like when you're talking about this, I'm like, oh yeah, those guys just were at each other's throats through through that film. So, but there were no knives, there were no handguns, there were no explosives. So,
well, this is kind of like Knives Out, but
yes.
If you've seen the film, you know who did it from the beginning.
Right.
So this you don't know who did it from the beginning. You just know that somebody's dead.
Yep. And
there are numerous different ways that they could have died, and numerous different people. Like one of the things is they're a flower shop and it's Valentine's Day. That's honeypot right there. Like think how much, and we're talking about this is in the 90s, so more people are paying cash. So a flower shop on Valentine's Day, you're telling me there's not going to be a till filled with cash? Was this robbery gone wrong? Was this somebody from Jasmine's past that is seeking revenge? What, there are, was this an accident? Was this what is this? So there are a whole, and we sort of explore each one of these possible, scenarios to that delivers, okay, this is plausible. All right. It was, someone tried to hit up the flower shop because it was Valentine's Day and they knew that it was going to be tons of money.
Yeah.
Did that happen? We don't know yet. Well, I know, but I'm just saying, like, they start exploring all these other things.
For sure.
I know what happened, but I'm not saying what happened.
Well, also you have, and I'm looking for subtext. I'm like, all right, there's very specific flowers in in that opening, in that shot on page 3. And I'm like, oh, did these flowers have a story? I'm wondering, like, all right, maybe so there's
you learn something in issue 2 that does have to do with the very specific exotic flowers.
Excellent. Oh, now I'm really excited.
So I would say around 2/3 of the way through issue 2, you learn something that is hinted at in issue 1, but then you learn more about it in issue 2. And then that just like makes you wonder, okay, so, and then takes it in another direction. So
that's awesome. So how's it going on the Kickstarter? I mean, you're doing pretty well.
I have not checked it since say 2 o'clock this afternoon.
That's amazing.
I have not I try very hard not to be obsessive like that. I've also got like I'll show you my list of things to. Oh well,
Your work.
It's propped. My notebook with the list of things to do is one of the notebooks propping up my separate light. So
Nice.
I can't get to it yet. But I mean, I have like a double page spread of things that I have to do.
I totally hear.
So, you know, I've got more stuff that I have to do that I can't be consistently on Twitter, consistently, you know, checking the Kickstarter.
You're doing amazing. You're doing an amazing job. To say that you're not on Twitter or Instagram, I mean, and I'm not saying you are, but you are. The posts are consistent. They
have to be.
No, I know, but I mean, not everybody is. I mean, I know. I watch a lot of these things happen. You know, lots of our guests have been running these things, and some are very, very good at the consistency and the time, and you know, others are just like, oh, and there's this, you know. So,
well, I mean, there's like a science behind it. This idea of like you have to post at a certain time of the day and all that other, you know, the analytics and such. One thing that I've been sort of touting is Greg Pak has a great book called Kickstarter Secrets that I suggest everybody gets, because if you read that book, it will either, you know, really sort of pump you up for doing the Kickstarter, or it'll scare the hell out of you.
Yeah.
And and if it scares the hell out of you, good, because it means you're not ready.
Sure. Yeah, like I mean, Gamal Hennessy's book on starting a comic book business. Have you seen the book?
I've seen it. I haven't read it though.
Yeah, it's 450 pages of just dense information, which is great because it is. I mean, it is the Bible. If you were going to do it, like if you can get through it and do it, you're going to do all right. Plus, you have the comic book that's going to change the world and become a Prime show. So it's a pretty good double deal. So
I know, you know, it's really rude that I roll my eyes at that. It really is. It's just, you know, like the Beatles didn't know they were going to be the Beatles.
No.
Do you know what I'm saying? So I find it really presumptuous when people just sort of like come into this being like, I'm the next big thing. It's like, I didn't bring my monkey wrench, but I'm pretty sure that Jimmy Page knew that they were going to be lesbians. Well, but I'm pretty sure that when Paul and John were, you know, writing music and recording things in Paul's father's bathroom, that they didn't know that they were going to be the Beatles. You know what I mean? It's ridiculous.
We're going to be the Beatles.
It's ridiculous. It's you just. I mean, the thing is that the one thing that we can't control. The two things we can't control. We can't control the timing of the rest of the world, and we can't control luck. And these two things play such a huge factor in every. I mean, listen. You talk to every seasoned comic pro. Or anything. It doesn't matter if it's comics, if it's advertising, it's design, it's film, it doesn't matter. There are so many projects that are dead. And it doesn't matter who was involved, whatever. You have no control over the matter. You can be the guy.
There are also projects that are produced and then shelved.
Oh, for sure. I mean, some.
And you think like, this is going to be my thing. Like, this is going to be the big break. Yeah. And then it gets shelved.
Yeah. Or like, you know, it's like, oh, hey, you get the phone call and it's your editor and they're like, hey, how you doing? You're like, oh, good. And they're like, hey, so I'm going to be the editor for new book or whatever, or I'm leaving the company or whatever the story is. And so-and-so is your new editor. And you're like, okay, whatever you were working on, just say goodbye to it. Because it's just, that's a goner because everybody wants to put their fingerprint on their projects. And
or you get a pitch greenlit by an editor who then leaves.
Never.
And then the new editor who's supposed to take over for the other editor rescinds your green light.
Yeah. Oh no, I was in the solicits for a major publisher, you know, on one of my top 3 book picks. Like if you could say, hey, give me 3 books that you would want to work on, this was easily in the top 3. And I'm like, yeah, this is it. I'm psyched. I was the guy, I had like a world-class writer, had an amazing cover artist. It was like the dream project. And then I got that phone call, and the new editor was like, hey, listen, we're going to go with a whole new creative team. I'm like, but we are the new creative team. Like we, the guy's writing the scripts right now. Like, so you have to just kind of like go, well, that's the end of it, and off you go.
That's why you have to always be creating, always.
Yeah, never stop. I mean, it's like, it's like the classic line with a novelist, and I'm sure it's the same way with screenwriters or whatever. But if you get picked up as a novelist, like, hey, we're going to do your book, you got to start writing
the next book.
Yeah, because if you're not writing the next book and you're sitting there and you're dealing with whatever's happening in the future from the thing, and when the time comes, you're going to be so screwed.
Yeah.
All right, here's a question from Sean. And here's a question from Sean. I'm sorry. Sean's very good at handling our busting on Staten Island.
There you go.
Yeah, he's the man when it comes to that.
Do you have a special way of world building?
Yeah. So do you have a
I personally don't. I feel that you approach a story one of three ways. You either start with the plot, you start with the character, you start with the world.
Yep. And
the whichever one you start with, the other two have to complement and challenge that. The biggest worlds that I created was probably for Forgotten Home. And I really, Forgotten Home actually started as another story I had, when everybody was really involved in loving Frozen, I wanted to write like the anti-Frozen. I wanted to write a story about two sisters that wanted to kill each other. So I started writing this sort of swords and sorcery kind of, castles and magic. And there were some other bits of it that weren't really fitting into that. So I sort of, cut those out and put those to the side, and started developing those more. And that's what sort of created Forgotten Home. So instead of it being the sort of swords and sorcery, it was more of magic, but sort of interplanetary magic.
Yeah.
And the other swords and sorcery, castle, dragons kind of thing is still being worked on. So with luck, within the next maybe year or two, we'll be launching that. But in terms of world building, I try and find, whatever is going to challenge the characters, whatever is going to be plausible that the plot is going to live in this place, but make sure that it allows for there to be bumps in the road. Because if a character sails through everything and the plot is just like easy breezy, there's no drama, there's no conflict. There's why am I reading this?
Yeah.
Why are we interacting with this? You need to have conflict, you need to have drama, and you need to have there be something to challenge your characters and some type of plot to challenge it. And if there is something in the world itself to challenge it, then that just sort of enriches that.
Yeah, no, I think that's really sound. And I think, all three of those things build on each other. I mean, you're constantly going to make, because as you come up with these sort of more complex plot challenges or environmental challenges, your characters become better at what they're doing. And
so you have to create new challenges for them. Yeah.
So you have to step up your own game, and that's really typically the rewriting process. I mean, you need to, you kind of go through it as you're outlining or kind of discovery writing it. But the thing is that you're going to go like, okay, now I can see where this didn't fit. Okay, let me try to fix this back here. And then you kind of run through it again. You go, okay, well, let me bump this up or turn this down. And it's it's super exciting, but I think you're dead on with the three sort of, the pyramid of creation. So that's what I'm copywriting that right now. So hold on a second.
Okay. Yeah.
All right. I got that. That's cool. It's all set.
I want my royalties from that.
Sure. Well, you'll get your 4%.
Better than nothing.
Yeah, there you go. So look at that.
4% out of something is better than 0% out of something.
There you go. No, I think that's cool. So, I mean, okay, let's try to divide into two things. Let's go with an assigned project from an existing property. Like, hey, we want you to write an issue or an arc. How do you go about that introductory assignment kind of approach?
Well, if the character's already an established character, then it's just a matter of coming up with a plot to challenge them. And either if you're working in the same environment that they're always there, then find a way to turn the environment on its head. So let's say you were doing Spider-Man. Okay, Spider-Man primarily works in New York. Well, is there a way that we can get him out of New York plausibly to do a little fish out of water kind of thing? After I had worked on Daredevil, and the story heavily is associated with Misty Knight, I had pitched this idea of Daughters of the Dragon and Dragon in Space. This idea of, Colleen and Misty, who were bail bondsmen for a while in in their lore, working for SWORD and sort of finding these like intergalactic bail jumpers. And
very cool,
because these are street level characters.
Yep.
They are very rooted. Yes, one has a bionic arm and the other, can manipulate her chi and is super strong, but they are still street level characters and they're terrestrial. So let's put them in an environment where the characters themselves, we know who they are. So I don't have to work on that, but let's put them in an environment that is going to challenge them. Where their expectations are going to be turned on their heads. So let's do that. And that's where, and we would have, and the idea was basically we would have all these great sort of cameos. So you'd have like a Beta Ray Bill, you'd have a Norrin Rad, Silver Surfer, you'd have Gladiator from the Shi'ar, all these different, intergalactic characters that would then be part of this story. And so that was part of the plot, but also sort of enriching the world.
Yeah, no, I love that. I love that. That's a great approach to it. Do you keep I have very comprehensive folders, digital folders of all these ideas. I have.
Oh yeah, I have notebooks.
Ideas. It's just a morgue of ideas.
I have notebooks and behind me, you can't really see, but I have tons of folders and stuff, and I have notebooks that are sort of, this notebook is specifically going to be for this story, and this notebook is going to be for that story. And I've got in various stages of being written, I've got about 2.5 to 3 dozen stories. Some are much more fleshed out than others. But I'm probably going to be writing well into my 70s to get everything done. Because as I'm writing those, new ideas are coming. So it's like a constant.
So one of my phrases to many of my Gary, plug your ears, because this I had a lot of students, and they would just be so desperately holding on to these ideas that they had, for their concepts for design or advertising, whatever it was. And I'm like, you guys, you got to let it go. You just got to either do it or let it go. And they're like, no, but you don't understand this. I'm like, I got it. But the thing is, you're standing in the stream of creativity. And if you're holding on to something, you're only blocking the flow. Let it go, because the more stuff comes, the more you do. It's just how it works. Yeah. So, and it's frustrating because you want to do more.
That's one of the things. So I teach second year and third year at the Kubert School, and my second year classes, I think it's pretty fun. And the second year students are like, "Oh, you're the best," blah, blah, whatever. And I said, "Yeah, you say that now, and then next year when I teach writing, you are not going to call me the best, because you're going to come to my class and you're going to be like, wow, this is the writing class, and I'm going to write this epic story in Erica's class, and I'm going to shoot holes in it. And you're going to hate me." And that's what always happens. So I warn them. I say, look, you have your baby. Do not come and use that as your assignment for my class, because I will destroy it. Yeah. And you will get pissed, and I will hear you around the corner calling me a bitch.
Yeah.
Happens.
But I'll destroy it straight up.
Yeah. Well,
and some of them did not believe me.
Yeah.
And I was called a bitch quite many times around the corner. I'm like, you do realize I can hear you in these hallways echo, right? Like you just saw me coming up the stairs.
Yeah. Right.
So.
Well, and it's it's not a big place, you know. I mean, there's only so much elbow room in those
Look,
buildings.
they gotta vent their frustrations. That's fine.
Right.
Look, if I have to be the bitch for you to be a better creator, I'll be the bitch.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, and I think we should all be so fortunate to have
A bitch.
Bitches in our life telling us stuff here and there. And that's just because we all need to be slapped once or twice, you know.
Well, as creators, we get so myopic that we can't see the forest through the trees, and you need somebody who's objective. And this is where an editor comes in. You need somebody who doesn't live the story that you do to come in and say, that's not going to work. And you can reject that and get angry.
We all freeze Gary. They'll think it's all of us.
What? I didn't hear what you said.
What happened?
Why is everybody
she's frozen a bit.
Oh, I froze. Sorry.
This is a good point.
Yeah, but what I was saying is that, like, you either accept this sort of outside opinion to make the story better, or you collect everything and say, no, you don't understand my story, and then you never make it because all you do is you just sort of ruminate over it a million times. The problem is that when you're writing your own story, all the connective tissue, all the connections between A, B, C, and D is in your head. So when you read it, you automatically make the connections. When somebody new reads it, there's all these holes, and they say, but I don't understand. What about this? Oh, let me explain. No. If it's not on the page, it doesn't exist.
It doesn't exist. Right. And that's super, I mean, that's a super important thing. And I mean, I try to encourage every single, creator on the story, on the show here, even if they're writing and drawing their own comic, I'm like, write it out, write the thing out as a script, put it on paper, make it a real thing, share it with people, even let other people read it. Because I mean, it isn't until that it's actually put down that it becomes a thing. I mean, you can thumbnail it and script it as you go, and you can make a comic book that works just fine, but you're going to become much better at your craft if you can sort of externalize it and be able to kind of look at it objectively.
The problem with doing it as you go along is that if you are coming up with the story as you go along rather than sort of pre-plotting it out,
right,
whatever mood that you are in on a particular day is going to affect the story.
Yeah.
And if you are in a disparate mood one day versus the next, there's going to be this weird swerve in the story.
And readers don't typically go, I like this. You know what I mean?
Yeah. If there's this weird turn, that's when people are gonna, what? I don't understand. I mean, that's why I'm pretty tight with my outlines, and I stick pretty close to them. I mean, yes, I know storytelling is an organic process and such, but I've also worked on a lot of licensed properties where when you hand in an outline, that is gospel.
Yes.
So even if you want to divert, you have to go through a committee to propose a diversion from the outline that had been through the committee to be approved.
Sure. And that that eats into the timeline of the project.
Exactly.
You can't afford that. And, I mean, and, maybe if you're the writer, you're like, well, whatever. But I mean, you're not going to have that creative team on your back if you're taking their time away. They're going to be like, listen, you either stop this or find another team. Like it's not.
And that's why, I mean, I tend to, yes, I will allow things to change and to organically change while I'm telling a story, if it's my own story. At the same time, I tend to lean more on my outline simply because I do a lot of the heavy lifting up front. For me, scripting is pretty, I've got, I'll already know how many pages each sequence is going to be before I start breaking down panels. So I'm very sort of meticulous that way. And, one of the things that I got from the students was like, oh, but stories can change. Yes, they can. But if you're working for a licensor and you've already had your outlines approved, maybe they're not going to change.
Well, they know they're talking to a pro.
Well, it's also the aspect of
She's just like,
it's a
damn
perspective.
students.
When you're young, you're looking at it this is a very idealistic sort of enterprise. You're like,
Totally.
I'm making art, I'm doing the thing that I want to do, but it is a product, and the product does need to be done with consistency and timing. So it's real tough, and especially if anybody who has any interest of working for, the big two, it is all about being able to be on time and deliver that product. They don't care. They don't care.
And until you are that super top tier creator,
yeah,
you hand in an outline, they are holding you to that.
For sure.
It's kind of like if you did a Kickstarter for, let's say I did a Kickstarter for.
I know you're going. This is awesome.
Look, I'm here to hawk my book.
No,
let's be honest.
Hell yeah, do it.
But like, let's say I did the Kickstarter for The Deadliest Bouquet, and I said it's a crime thriller, it's a family drama, this, that, and the next thing. And then I decide halfway through that the girls are going to get on a rocket and go to space.
Mm-hmm.
And this is what I deliver to the 696 people or however many people. And they're like, what the actual hell is this?
Yeah, right.
This is not what you sold us.
Listen, you have, this is your first act. And in your first act, you have to make a promise to your reader. And if you don't come through on these promises, however many that you set up in the first act, it could be 1, it could be 20. If you don't follow through with these things, by the end of that book, your reader is going to hate you.
Yeah.
And so that's exactly what you would be like, hey, here's our promise. My promise is this really interesting mystery story about these 3 sisters and a murder. And then now
they go to space.
Right. It's like what is it? The Life of Brian, when he falls off the building and then all of a sudden lands in a spaceship, and there's like this 5-minute sequence of him flying through space, which is hilarious. But
let's be honest, you have to be altered in some way to be able to really enjoy that movie. Like you have to be in some altered state of being to really get it. Otherwise, you're like, what the actual hell am I looking at?
Right. And I'm sure the vast majority of people who view that film go, what the hell just happened? And
if you ever watch Flying Circus, like, where did my fishy fish go?
Right.
What?
Yeah.
What? Yeah. Why is his arms super long and weird and creepy? And I don't get it.
No, it's yeah. But I think, yeah, but amidst all this, that's a super, super strong thing. This, advice that you're giving to, writers and creators is like, listen.
And I know that I pretend like I know I'm acting like my students are all rotten. They're not all rotten.
No.
And they're not all rotten all the time.
Just 20% of them.
All of them, actually, all of them are rotten some of the time, but not all of them are rotten all of the time.
Oh, yeah. Like so nice.
That sounds like you could needle stitch or whatever, cross stitch that thing on a pillow. That's
exactly.
a good.
I'd see it. You're gonna make them some money on that. Get the teachers to buy it.
We want our 4%, but we get it. So 1 week left. Kickstarter. One
week left. Should I check the numbers while?
Yeah, do it.
I don't know why you haven't yet. Come on.
This is exciting.
Let's see what the numbers say.
John MacArthur.
690 backers. 23,484. So we want to get to 24,000 people because Adriana Mello did a fabulous, fantastic, beautiful print that I posted on Twitter and Instagram. So if we hit 24,000, then everybody who backed at the physical book level gets that print, that 5x7 print for free. So so we got a little more than $600. I'm like, what do you do? I'm like, whose random naked back is that?
I'm looking up Erica Schultz.
I'm like, what are you looking at?
You probably didn't watch the other week, but we had Anderson Carmen on as our guest. And when I first did my first Google search for him, one of the first things that comes up is a picture of Pam Anderson and Carmen Electra. So,
Which is it? Erica Schultz on Instagram?
You could do the Deadliest Bouquet comic or Erica Schultz writes.
Bam!
I am not the best writer.
What?
I found it.
There you go.
Follow it.
Second, that second image is Adriana Mello.
I'm embiggening you. Oh, that thing was great. Yeah, you put that up today. That's beautiful.
Yes, that's Adriana Mello's. There should be a couple of images there.
Is that acrylic?
I believe it is acrylic and marker.
Marker, yeah.
Yeah, the marker. I'm such a big fan of
Copo. And there's Rose, and that was Poppy starting. There's Rose.
It's kind of like Kate from
Violet.
And there's Violet, Violent Violet.
Love it.
Violet.
It's a great piece.
She looks so sweet there.
She's not. She's bad.
I read it. I know.
Everybody, this is, each one of the sisters is like, the way I was explaining it to somebody is like, they're basically like all on an audio board. Like you can go up or you could go down, but they're all on the same track.
Yeah.
So we're going to see Violet calm down a bit. We're going to see Poppy like go ape, and we're going to see Rose like try and be like, okay, I'm going to lose my shit now because my two sisters are like bothering the hell out of me. So they all have the capacity to go crazy or all the way back. So we're going to, obviously, each one of these young women are going to be tested to the absolute limits. And yeah, things are going to get kind of crazy.
It's going to be great.
Yes. And I'm finishing up the fourth script. I got some edits from James last night. So I'm finishing up the fourth script this week. And then the fifth script's already outlined. So
that's amazing. That's amazing. You should be, you're very excited and probably very relieved that there's just one more week of obsessively checking.
Yes, one more week. And I still have to, and then I have to make sure that I write out all my Instagram posts and I write out all my Twitter posts and everything. And I did a huge long thread today where you could see all the podcasts that I've done this entire month.
Yeah, it's an
exhaustive list.
No, you have been doing the work, to say the least. It's been a huge undertaking, but it's clearly working in your benefit, and I firmly believe you'll make your mark, no problem.
I hope so. So.
I mean, I know it's going to be a huge struggle, and I doubt anybody will prove us wrong.
Yeah, they won't prove us wrong. It's good.
Like an actual statement.
You can put that on the back of the novel.
You know what? Everyone there's so much oppositional disorder out there. I'm just trying to rile them up. So
being contrarian.
Yeah, they'll prove. Yeah, they're like, oh yeah, I'll get that comic book and show it to her. I'll make her life better. You watch it.
Well, they always say that last like 48 hours, you're supposed to see like a big spike. So
yeah. We'll see. We'll see if there's a spike. I doubt it. Fingers crossed. Yeah, I'm pumped. I'm excited to see it. It's been great. It's actually been great because you came on right when it started. Matt was all dismissive because he was done and he was all happy, sitting in his pile of Spanish.
Matt was. See, the funny thing is, like, I'm going to take some credit for discovering Matt.
Oh no.
Well, no. I mean, Liana Kangas worked with Matt on a project, but I gave Matt a job for Forgotten Home.
Right.
So Matt was the colorist on Forgotten Home.
Yeah.
Nice.
And he really cut his teeth on that book. So I'm taking a little bit of credit for Matt.
Take it all.
Do it.
I'll take 4% credit for Matt.
At least.
You hear that, Emmons? Memons, you're gonna 4%.
Memons.
I want my 4%. So there you go.
That's fine. You should have it. I say.
She deserves it.
Yeah, right on. Let's see who we have on next week. Boom. Omar Morales is on next week.
Ooh.
Very
excited.
nice.
There's an edit. It's not done here, but the Marvel Bullpen reunion is postponed. We will.
Okay.
Well, we have Bob Franz and Kevin Cuff coming on.
Oh yeah.
Yes, because they have Dust Pirates, which I actually I got to read today.
Oh, did you? Nice.
Yes, I did.
So they're going to be coming on.
I'm gonna read it.
I'm expecting outfits. I want hats. I want to see a show. So
Okay.
that's what not from you, Gary, from them.
Oh, don't.
Say hi to Jim Williams for me and Frank Thierry.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, how many words we get in on Frank. Meanwhile, we'll have the swear jar just going full tilt.
Yeah.
I've been pretty good today.
But Frank. That's
Yeah, no, well, Frank makes me look like a nun.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So, that's cool. And
Has there been any swears this episode?
I said shit a few times. I said
Oh my
like shit
God.
and bullshit.
Yeah.
Oh.
But I haven't really let her rip.
Loose. Yeah.
I haven't really let her rip. So.
Yeah. So we got a great lineup for the rest of the season. I'm pretty excited. Get an Asheville local. Hope's going to be coming on at the end of the season, so that's
Very
pretty
cool.
dope. And I've got a couple secret people coming possibly at the end, but
Secret people.
For our bullshit special event.
Yes, we got our BS special event coming up. So
The big story.
a big story. We got a big story to even though we've already told everybody what it is. Well, we got some stuff going on there. But yeah, it's a pretty good season. And make sure everybody stay tuned. Not here, but go to sketchschool_show
John.
for his after party.
John's after party. There you go.
God, those guys stay up to I don't know how late.
They're partying. You got a DJ. They're partying. They're drawing. Oh my God.
They've got a DJ.
They got a DJ
spinning.
Yeah.
On their show.
He's like,
Look, they're cooler than you are. All right, just admit it. Just
infinite.
We have a theme song now.
We do have a theme song, and that's. I'm gonna just sit on that little bit of
Damn straight.
Yeah.
so you've got your own theme song. All right.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
Watch.
You're gonna hear
You're
it.
gonna go to the after party, and they're gonna have their own theme song.
Yeah,
I hope so.
Or they could be remixing ours.
And we get 4%.
Sample it. They're gonna sample it.
Yeah, they'll sample it. They'll make $1 million, and we'll just be sitting back going. But
Thank you.
whatever.
Come again.
Oh yeah. So, what do you have any other projects coming up that are outside of this that we can talk about?
I do have a project that the book that I edited with Mad Cave Studios will Stellatia was the artist and Eric Burnham was the writer. That's going to be coming out hopefully at the end of the year. And I'm also editing an OGN for Mad Cave's YA imprint called Maverick. But I don't think we've announced the team yet. Okay. I am working with Van Jensen. He and I are co-writing a series that's going to be coming out from another publisher. And Anike, who is this fantastic Spanish artist who I adore. She and I worked sort of tangentially together over at Dynamite on Red Sonja. And she's fantastic. And I think this is a really funky, cool, fun project that when we finally get to announce it, everybody's going to be like, "Ooh,
cool!"
So, yeah,
I'm gonna try. I want to track down those Red Sonja issues because that's a.
It was when Marguerite Bennett wrote it. It was when they had it was right after Swords of Sorrow, which I had written the Lady Zorro and Black Sparrow single issue, and I co-wrote with G. Willow Wilson the Masquerade and Kato issue. It was right after Swords of Sorrow, and they relaunched Red Sonja, Deja Thoris, and Vampirella. And because I had lettered the entire crossover series for Swords of Sorrow, I then lettered those 3 series going out.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Nice. Yeah, I love sword and sorcery. I love fantasy. All that kind of stuff is it's a blast to write and it's a blast to read. Gary, are you signing up right now on Kickstarter?
Of course.
Nice.
And you should be too.
Right on there. Yeah, and then everyone,
Crossover, pre-order now.
yeah, go to betas_comics, order your copy.
Beta.
Signed copy is available, etc., and so forth.
Where is that store?
It is in Fort Collins, Colorado, in a much cooler place than you or I. I don't know. Maybe it is. I don't know.
I don't know. My you would think my husband's a polar bear, as cold as the air conditioning is in this house all the time. I'm always walking around with a sweatshirt. Between him and the cat, the two of them are covered in fur, so that's probably why the AC is on.
Oh my God!
Gotta shave him.
When I see you at a convention, I hope you will remember my polar bear joke, and I will tell you my polar bear joke.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a doozy. So, all right. Well, Erica, thank you so much for coming on tonight.
Thank you very much for having me, both of you. Thank you.
A full talk with you, and to get a sort of a glimpse into what's going on with you.
Theme song.
Yeah, there we go. All right. Well, everybody, thank you for tuning in. Click like, subscribe, whatever the thingamajig and the googly do.
Smash that button.
Find us at, Big Story Pod anywhere. That's about all I got to say about that. I'm not a pro when it comes to this part of the show. Thanks, guys.
Tisk tisk.
This is
Phil's not here.
It's Phil's job. I don't do this. I do the intro, not the outro.
It's true.
I've got blisters on my fingers.
And your tonsils.